In a unanimous decision, Israel's security cabinet voted to broaden its military offensive in Gaza, seize Palestinian territory, and occupy the Strip. According to Israeli officials, the plan will force Palestinians into southern Gaza, and the Israeli army would engage in what's being described as intensive fighting for months. And within Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, far-right members say a decision like this was long overdue.
It's clear there won't be any in-and-out operations. We'll recruit reserve soldiers to enter and control the ground.
From the moment the military operation begins, the areas we will occupy, we will not leave them.
The move has been criticized by family members of Israeli captives, saying escalating the fighting will leave their loved ones in Gaza abandoned and put their lives at further risk.
We are all under the understanding that the continuation of the war will not bring the hostages back.
Satellite images captured within the last week revealed the Israeli military leveling buildings and constructing a new area west of Rafah in southern Gaza, one that mirrors a planned so-called humanitarian zone near the Marag axis. But it remains unclear when or whether this new plan will be realized. One Israeli official says the government is waiting for a visit by U.S. President Donald Trump to the region. The Palestinians in Gaza are left to face death, destruction, and starvation as Israel continues to block humanitarian aid and wage its war on the Strip. Hamda Salhout, Al Jazeera.
We're now going to speak to Robbie Damelin, who's the spokeswoman of the Parent Circle Families Forum, joining us from Tel Aviv this hour. Thank you for your time. So we now know that the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved these plans to expand its military occupation in Gaza and effectively just take it all. How do you think this decision is going to impact families, Palestinian families and Israeli families?
But all war impacts families. I don't think that people see what happens to people during the war. What is the consequence of all this madness? This is really, I think, the darkest time for Israel and Palestine. I know you have all the political experts talking about it, but I want to talk about the human factor. I want to talk about the people on the ground that are working to make change, because that's what's important. You can hear all the political experts, world experts on peace, or world experts on war, or the Houthis, and all of the other things that I've heard on your program. But do you ever meet Ma'ozi Non, whose parents were burned to death on the 7th of October, and he is creating an organization which is having the largest anti-war event on this Thursday and Friday. It's called the People's Peace Summit. Thousands and thousands of people will gather in Jerusalem to try to find a way to end this madness. We cannot go on killing each other. I think of the human consequence. I think of the women and the children in Gaza, and I can't bear to be part of this situation. And so I will do everything in my power to make change. We have Palestinian partners who have not left the parent circle since the 7th of October. In fact, they have lost huge amounts of family in Gaza and also in the West Bank, and yet they stay and talk for peace. And we had this week a ceremony on Memorial Day where thousands of Palestinians and Israelis came to listen, both in the West Bank and in Tel Aviv. And people all over the world were listening to this beautiful ceremony where people, Palestinians, could come and tell their story.
Right.
Where Musa, who tells his story of losing 25 of his family members, a doctor who came home to find his wife and child had been killed, and yet he still maintains the message of reconciliation.
Let me
So
just jump in
surely
there
if
for a second on that message of reconciliation. And just for clarity, your association, the Parents Circle Families Forum, it's a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization of over 700 families, right? Who've all lost an immediate family member to the ongoing conflict. But do you feel like your work is making a difference at all?
I can only tell you that for me, when the 7th of October happened, it was like almost the same as when I heard my son had been killed. I wanted to change the world overnight. And the survival tactic is to work as hard as you can. And so I've been to America for 7 times. I've been to Italy and England and you name it, to try to stop the polarization, to try to stop people from importing our conflict and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. And I can tell you that at this ceremony that we had the other night, there were the most extraordinary people. One of them was a hostage, and she was released, and her husband was killed, and his body is still in Gaza. And so if those kind of people can come and talk out for peace, then call all these wonderful politicians all over the world. Why don't they support the NGOs on the ground who are working to end the conflict, who are working day and night to try to find another way, to try to find a political solution? Yes, we have the worst government that we've ever had. We have the most dangerous people. But if we don't work to stop this, then what is the future for my grandchildren?
That was my question to you, in fact, is that you have a right-wing government in Israel. Some would say probably the most right-wing government Israel has ever had. So how does your talk of peace and reconciliation actually go down at home?
Well, we were thrown out of the schools where we've been working for many, many years cross-border into Israeli classrooms, but we don't give up. That is the point. You can try to stop this. We are probably the most unpopular organization with this present government because we are a threat, because we are the human consequence. If bereaved parents, and by the way, we are now 800 members since October the 7th, which is heartbreaking, but we have the most extraordinary people who have joined, people who lost members of their family on the 7th, whose parents were burned to death, whose children were killed. And think about all the children in Gaza. And if you really want to help, then get somebody to force the government to allow food in for everybody and money for children, because they are the consequence of this madness. How many children must die before they will realize? You know, there is this human picture in my mind all the time of a little boy standing in Gaza with his cat. And he said he's not going to leave home to go with his parents to the south to run away if he can't take his cat. And eventually the parents were persuaded to take the cat. And then I saw a girl coming out of the hostages carrying her dog. These are the human consequences. What of the kids that are growing up in Gaza, where there's a war every 2 years? What kind of adults will they be if they have no freedom of movement and they can't protect their families? And what kind of adults will come out of Gaza, not out of Gaza, out of Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod, the Israeli towns that have been rocketed all the time? You spoke about the Houthi missile. I was in my safe room for a long time yesterday. These are the consequences. This whole nation is walking around in trauma, as well as the Palestinians. And we have to be rid of this anger and start to talk to each other. Even if we don't agree, we have to listen with empathy.
Okay. On that note, we will leave it there. Robbie Damelin, you're the spokeswoman for the Parents Circle Families Forum, speaking to us from Tel Aviv this hour. We thank you for your time.
And I hope that you will tune in to the People's Peace Summit. Thank you so much.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.